Hi, my name is Alexa Huether. I'm a senior in the School of Foreign Service studying international economics and Spanish.
And hi, I'm Winston Ardoin. I'm a senior in the SFS as well, studying regional comparative studies with a focus on Latin America and Africa, and I study Spanish as well.
And for this research, this was conducted for our class Spanish 313, Bilingualism, Mind, and Context with Professor Jung Eba Moon. And our question is, how does the Catholic Church contribute to the maintenance or degradation of English-Spanish bilingualism in Tucson, Arizona, and in Washington, D.C.? And in order to study this, we designed a methodology where we look at two churches in Tucson, St. Cyril of Alexandria and the Cathedral of St. Augustine, and two in Washington, D.C., the Sanctuary of the Sacred Heart, and the Church of St. Augustine. And at these churches, we're examining the percentage of Spanish in the church weekly bulletins, the percentage of masses that are offered in Spanish, whether or not a child can go to Sunday school in Spanish, the percentage of priests that speak Spanish, and other appearances and images of the Spanish language at these churches. And collecting this data, we visited these churches and took photos outside. Only one of them we could go into due to COVID. And we also visited the church websites and spoke with people who work in these churches for other data points that we couldn't find. So on to what we found.
So we actually had a very interesting data collection. We ended up finding out that of the 4 churches, 3 offered Sunday school in Spanish, both of the churches in Tucson, St. Cyril of Alexandria, and the Cathedral of St. Augustine. However, only one of the churches in DC offered Sunday school in Spanish, the Sanctuary of the Sacred Heart. St. Augustine, located here in DC, did not offer any Sunday school in Spanish. For the percentages of the priests that spoke Spanish, both of the churches in Tucson, St. Cyril and the Cathedral of St. Augustine, had 100% of their priests with the ability to speak Spanish. In DC, it was much lower. The Church of St. Augustine had 0%. Meanwhile, the Sanctuary of the Sacred Heart had 60% of their priests that spoke Spanish. However, we found it very interesting that of the priests who did not speak Spanish, all of them did speak at least one other language. Of the ones who didn't speak Spanish, that 40%, 20% did speak Haitian Creole, and 20% spoke Vietnamese. So they did speak 4 languages, just not Spanish. In terms of the weekly masses offered in Spanish, the smallest percentage was the Church of St. Augustine here in DC. However, the next percentage was St. Cyril of Alexandria in Tucson, followed by the Cathedral of St. Augustine in Tucson, with 22% and 28% respectively. The highest percentage was actually the Sanctuary of the Sacred Heart at 35%. And then for the percentage of the bulletins in Spanish, our 2 smallest percentages were actually one church in Tucson and one in DC, and their 2 highest percentages were one in Tucson and one in DC as well. Just like for the other data points, the Church of St. Augustine here in DC did not have any percentage of their bulletin in Spanish. However, the Cathedral of St. Augustine in Tucson had 3% of their bulletin. Meanwhile, the Church of St. Cyril of Alexandria had 38% of their bulletin in Spanish, and the Sanctuary of the Sacred Heart had 50% of their bulletin in Spanish. Now, we found this very interesting because the Sanctuary of the Sacred Heart here in DC was actually specifically set up as a parish to support bilingual and non-English speaking Catholic parishioners here in DC and Catholic practitioners here in DC. So with that being said, we found that Catholic churches in religious life can be effective forms of promoting bilingualism, specifically for Spanish speakers, but for other language speakers as well. Here in the United States, with education, written language, and spoken language offered in the church parishes, but only is this the case if the community that attends the church is a Spanish-speaking community. If the church itself is not a Spanish-speaking community, then Spanish will simply not be used, and the church itself will not be a supportive and helpful part of maintaining Spanish language bilingualism here in the US. That example is found in the Church of St. Augustine. Obviously, in comparison to Tucson, DC has a much smaller Spanish language community. The Spanish language community is still very present. However, there are specific communities set up throughout the city to specifically support that community. The Church of St. Augustine, on the other hand, was designed and developed as a specifically Black and African-American Catholic parish Thus, it is important in supporting the Black Catholic community here in DC, not the Spanish-speaking community like the Sanctuary of the Sacred Heart. However, in Tucson, that has a much larger Spanish-speaking community, both of the churches play an important role in maintaining Spanish language bilingualism.